Um, and back to Brad Warner. I haven't been on talked about Brad for a while, but he just sucks. The titles of his talks are so provocative that I get sucked in every once in a while. So this week I came across one that said, "Our Zen," and I won't get the quote exactly right, but "Are Zen ceremonies a bunch of superstitious mumbo jumbo?" And that caught my eye, and I said, I wonder what Brad has to say about that. Do people know? Does everybody know who Brad is? Some do, some don't. Many do. Just really in a nutshell, he is a Zen teacher. He's studied in Japan. He's a Soto teacher, and was at one time in his life a punk rock musician. And if you watch his videos, he often subjects us to some of his bass or guitar playing. And it's not because I don't like punk rock. Let's just leave it there. Okay. Anyway, so, but he's very sort of iconoclastic in his approach to his writings and talks. He has a book that's called "Shut Up and Sit Down," or I think is one of them. And, he kind of looks for outrageous titles and things to get our attention. It works with me. So he got me this week with wanting to know whether Zen ritual or Zen ceremony is superstitious mumbo jumbo. And he approaches it with a story about an aunt of his that he was very close to earlier in his life, who's now has pretty advanced Alzheimer's and is in an institution. And basically, as often happens when people get that far, anyway, she's kind of off in the ozone most of the time. And so Brad does a healing ceremony, not entirely unlike what we do when people are treetop and after chanting the Heart Sutra, then there's dedicated, and then there's the list of people that are acknowledged for health and healing, right? So there's a list of names. And we've done that occasionally here, much more occasionally. But so Brad does that. He says he didn't know where he picked it up. Somewhere he travels extensively, visits a lot of Zen centers to give talks and things. And he picked this idea where he does the chanting of the Heart Sutra, and then it's followed by this recitation of the names of people for health and healing. And so, for whatever occasion he decided to do this for this aunt. And so he's somewhere, and she's somewhere else on the planet, and she's been very unwell for many years. And so he does the chanting, and he then follows it with the healing aspect. And simultaneously, another aunt is visiting this aunt in the institution that she's in. And at approximately the same time that Brad does this ceremony, the aunt with the Alzheimer's starts to talk about him. Brad is taking care of it. Brad is going to do it. Things like that. She hasn't mentioned Brad's name maybe in a decade. And all of a sudden, she can't shut up about Brad. So who knows what that is and what brought that on? But his take is this, and I share this very closely, so as well. He also talks about his Kensho experience, which, as you probably know, in Soto, we don't like to talk about Kensho experiences, unlike our Rinzai cousins. And I'm not even sure the reasons for that taboo, but it's I can think of many actually, but I'm not sure what the actual reasons are. But so he tells his Kensho story, and what, of course, his Kensho story involves, as do all Kensho stories, is the experience of one body, right? Is experience between all distinctions, separations breaking down, and him no longer seeing, during this experience, no longer seeing himself as an isolated individual, but as an expression of the entire universe. So from Brad's perspective, and I share this as well, and I think of any, frankly, the experience of anyone who's had Kensho, and it's the fundamental truth of our practice, is that this is one body, that all the separations that we think exist, that all the distinctions that we think exist, that all the barriers that we think exist are just that. They are illusions of our mind. And that, in fact, this is one body. Completely, intimately connected. Now, sometimes this is understood by folks in terms of, Thich Nhat Hanh talked extensively about interconnectedness. And he had a sort of mechanistic way of explaining it. And it's not it's a bad way. It just, it doesn't really get to the truth of it, but it points in the direction. So, if we, and we could do this with anything. We can take a tree, right? And the tree needs the grass and the soil and the microorganisms and the sun and the rain, and on it we can go on and on and on and on, and maybe a farmer or a forester that cultivates it, and so we can build out these chains of interrelation, interconnectedness, and that's sort of a way that our intellects can get some intimation of what this experience of one body is like. But it is not a description of the one body. So it's as good, in some ways, it's a good description, and in some ways, it absolutely trivializes it. In the same way as if we take that, remember I don't know, it's like a song, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone's connected to the, like that. And so that's the description of the human body. Well, yeah, there are some connected bones, but it's hardly a description of the human body, right? But our language necessarily falls short. There's no way we can really talk about this experience of Kensho that really captures the truth of it, which is why we practice. But coming back to the point that Brad made, and I completely agree with him on this. If that's true, and I believe that it is, then locality is immaterial, right? Healing can take place across vast spaces. You don't have to be in the same room with someone. Because in the same, in the same sense that if you have an infection in your toe and we heal that infection, your whole body benefits, right? If you have infection in your toe, we don't have to do something to your head. Right? We can treat there, and the head also, benefits. When any aspect of reality is transformed, all of reality is transformed. That is a fundamental aspect of the Buddha's enlightenment. And there are those who are better versed in some of the principles of quantum physics and things that I am, that have started reveals all this, what is it, it's crazy synchronicity at a distance or whatever. Did I just make that phrase up? Did I say it right, Gary?
You got me.
They're laughing at me. Okay, I didn't say it.
Yeah, action. I don't know. It was action at a distance. I forget what the first word is. Anyway,
this guy named Einstein had that idea, and I don't know where he came up with it. But what we found is, they can, and again, pardon me, I'm going to give a very poor explanation of this, but what that phenomena, they've actually tested this. They've taken molecules and had them in a resonant state, vibrating together, and then they can take one of these molecules to like New Zealand, and the two of them continue to respond together. They're laughing even harder. I must be doing a really bad job of explaining this. Okay, let's try an alternative.
That's good. That's good. It's Einstein called it spooky action at a distance.
Spooky.
And everything is connected, because you have conservation of when new particles are created by, for instance, the degeneration of a preceding particle. They have characteristics that are tied to each other because of conservation of some of their aspects. And so the new particles each are tied to the other, and this process continues for everything that emerges. So you can actually measure the separation of created particles by how much they're tied together, but they're tied. Everything that emerged was in a process of pairing with the other things that emerged at the same time. Is that?
But there are also experiments with pairs of particles, that you're referring to, that you could separate them widely, and actions on one affect another that could be miles apart. There's an interesting thing where you can't use that to transfer information faster than the speed of light. It's kind of an interesting thing, but but an action taken on one instantaneously affects the other, no matter how far away it is, much faster than, you don't even say faster. It's not faster than the speed of light. It's simultaneously, no matter how far apart they are. So that's why Einstein thought it was spooky action at a distance, and at first didn't believe that it could be true, but it is. Anyway,
Thank you. Okay. So spooky action at distance. But there are these things emerging in physics that are essentially confirming what Buddhists have known for 2,500 years, maybe longer, that everything is connected. Now, why is that important? I mean, other than the obvious, it's extraordinarily important in this time when there are so many existential crises happening and people are frightened, overwhelmed, and to some extent paralyzed to make changes, right? And that's the question that comes up perpetually. You know, what can I do? This problem is so vast. How can I change things? They're just spiraling out of control, right? And so as we confront the various existential catastrophes that are occurring today, it's very tempting to feel utterly powerless, to feel unable to affect things at all. You know, after all, these are happening on a global scale, many of them, on a national scale at the very least. And it's completely understandable that we feel fear, we feel impotent in the face of these things. And yet we have this Dharma, this experience of one body that radically contradicts that. And says everything is interconnected intimately. And therefore, when anything changes, everything changes. When anything changes, everything changes. Now, that's hard to perhaps grasp experientially. Because most changes are not happening at a conspicuous level. If our hearts grow more peaceful, if we grow more compassionate, if we become more loving, does that change the entire universe? Yes. Does it change it to a degree that we can notice it? Probably not. So the more interesting question is, where are the thresholds? And is it really a linear relationship, or is it possibly non-linear? How many, one assumption that I make fairly safely is everybody on Earth doesn't have to get something for the paradigm to shift, for there to be a major change. It's some portion. I don't know what that portion is. Is it 1 million? Is it 10 million? Is it 100 million? I have no idea. But I do believe that within this one body, there are points of critical mass where things shift and change. And again, those don't necessarily need to be local. And they don't need to be proportional. We don't know when our efforts can have a vastly disproportionate effect on the universe. We don't know when our efforts can contribute to that forming of the critical mass that can make the shift happen. As you know, I was at the Common Ground Fair last week, and over the course of the 3 days, I probably talked to, I don't know, hundreds of people. Hundreds of really nice, deeply caring, sincere people. People who are really actively working in myriads of ways to make life on this planet better, to heal this planet, to heal one another. I have a friend who was up from Massachusetts, from the Berkshires, to both help out at the fair, and also he had he was selling, what's he selling? He's selling composting equipment. His whole thing is how we deal with our shit. His whole thing is developing systems to efficiently and sanitarily compost and recycle our human waste. Is he contributing? Absolutely. Contributing to the health of the planet. He's contributing to the development of that critical mass of people for change. I saw countless examples from farmers, from people who are doing food preparation, on and on, creating better, healthier systems of eating, of growing foods, of forestry. I could go on and on with the subjects and the change. So if we're tempted to say that change isn't happening, we're wrong. Change may not be happening at the level that the media is focusing on. No one's going to sell a lot of whatever by talking about my friend's composters. Right? That's not a catchy story. And it's true across the board. The change is happening. I come away from that experience much more optimistic than I have been in a while. Because I also understand this one body. And that it's not just local. It's not just in Western Mass or in where he happens to be, or here in Unity because we have the fair. It's happening everywhere. Everywhere is being changed. And this is not the kind of change that will be done by politicians. This is not the kind of change that will be done by multinational corporations. Until things have moved a certain distance that they're forced to respond. Right? They're completely sociopathically disinterested until it directly affects them. And then they'll take notice. But change is happening. Change is happening in our minds, in our hearts, because we sit. Because we have this practice. Maybe some days it's easy to get discouraged and say, Nothing's happening. I've been sitting here on these cushions for 3 years and just I'm the same and everything's the same. No, you're not. Just don't see it sometimes. But everything is different. And we're contributing to this growth of a critical mass. So I've said this before, the only error we can make is to allow the despair to overwhelm us to the point that we do nothing. Joanna Macy says this. She said this very beautifully and clearly. There's a quote from her. I probably should have set it up today, and I didn't. Which I should have. But anyway, but you know, paraphrasing, and I'm not doing well at paraphrasing today. But basically, what she's saying is, do what your heart calls you to do. Listen to your heart and do what your heart calls you to do. And if you are doing that, you are doing enough. You know, it's always easy to guilt ourselves, to overwhelm ourselves. Well, I did this, yeah, but I could have done that. No, what you're saying, if we're doing what, you know, because again, think of this multiplier effect. Think of this one body. Think of millions or tens of millions of people responding in this way. And I think she says further, I mean, if you've done that, you can go to bed at night knowing that you've done your share, you've done enough. It's a hard idea, you know. There now are a host of organizations that I'm intimately familiar with because I get emails from them every day, hundreds of them, constantly making me feel guilty and inadequate. And I'm talking about the people who are our allies, our fellow travelers, our, you know, environmental groups. You haven't given enough. We're going to die if you don't give us more money. You know, it's like, you know, what have you done lately? and I understand their situation. They're trying to stay alive. They're trying to raise money. But they're constantly making us feel the deficit, feel the overwhelmedness, feel the hopelessness. They're having the exact opposite effect of what they intend to have. They're not instilling the hope. They're not connecting us in this vast community, this vast network across the one body. They're contributing to the fear and the insularity and the sense of inadequacy. It's paradoxical and tragic. We are one body. We are one community. And we can make change, and we do matter. It's that simple. So back to Brad's question about Zen ceremonies, or are they mumbo jumbo? Well, he doesn't think that they are, and neither do I. Now, in his talking about this, he said something that is where I think the crux of this lies. When he did that chant for his aunt, he held the intention of helping his aunt. I think the intentionality is critical. If we just mumble the words, then they are mumbo jumbo. But if our intention is to help heal, if our intention is to change the one body, then we're going to have a very different impact. So I encourage, we're going to do the Tara mantra in a minute here. And I encourage you, you know, when we do the Tara mantra, typically what we do is we go around and see who, to whom and to what people would like to dedicate the mantra, right? For the health and well-being of, you know, in the same way that in the service, we say, you know, we dedicate these merits to the health and well-being of all beings, and especially, and then we recite the names of the people that the service is being dedicated for. I think that intentionality makes all the difference in the world. I can't explain why. But this is not unique to Zen. I mean, I've talked about this before. You know, in the Jewish tradition, there's a word kavanah for the intention that goes with prayer. You know, putting our whole body and mind into the chant, putting our whole body and mind into the prayer, giving it our intention, sending it to the people who need the healing, to the beings that need the healing. And certainly the need is enormous at any moment. So let's go around to anyone who wishes to, and please indicate who you'd like to dedicate the mantra to today. And we'll all, as we hear that, we'll all hold that in our hearts, and then we'll recite the mantra.
I heard from RJ, who, as you know, sits with us regularly. And she has been taking care of her grandmother. Her grandmother is in the ICU with sepsis, and RJ and her mom are keeping watch at the hospital at this time. And interestingly, she asked me to let the Sangha know that that was why she was not here. And now we all know, and we can do something about it. So thank you, Peter.
I would like us to keep in mind Ed, his son Ed, Christine, and Mary Lou. Thank you.
I would like to add my husband, Fred, and may Estelle Gerard remain healthy.
I would like to add prayers for Derek and for baby Gabriel. Thank you.
I'd like to add all the people in the Ukraine who are affected by the war.
I'm holding Erlene in my heart.
I'd like to add my aunt Marianne Cameron, who is in hospice and will be leaving us pretty soon, in the next few weeks, from what I understand.
I would like to add my husband, Jim, and my sister, Stephanie.
Okay. Right, because of the difficulty of chanting together on Zoom, I'll chant, and I ask you to mute yourselves and chant with me,
I want to add one more.
please.
Isaac
please.
Robinson.
Om Tare Tutare Turi Swaha. 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 All of you have the gallery view going right now where you can see everybody and you can see yourself. So take a moment and look at your image, at yourself. You are a bodhisattva. Your practice is making a difference for this world. Know that and go and live it. All right.
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good week. It's a very gorgeous fall day here. I hope it is wherever you are, and the waves calm down. And everybody has a good week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.